The alien livestock auction buzzed with activity as beings from dozens of species gathered around the massive containment pens. Towering Vrex merchants with their crystalline exoskeletons clicked their approval at prime specimens, while serpentine Nathi dealers slithered between the crowds, their scales shimmering as they evaluated potential purchases. The air thrummed with alien languages, translator devices working overtime to convert the chaos into comprehensible commerce. In the furthest corner of the facility, almost forgotten among the shadows, stood a single pen containing what the auctioneers had labeled as Lot 847. Inside paced a creature that defied easy categorization. Standing nearly 12 feet tall at the shoulder, it resembled an earth mammoth crossed with something from humanity's deepest nightmares. Its hide was a mottled gray-black, covered in patches of what looked like living metal that caught the artificial light in strange ways. 6 powerful legs supported its massive frame, each ending in hooves that seemed to absorb sound rather than create it. Most unsettling of all were its eyes, intelligent, deep amber orbs that tracked every movement with an awareness that made even veteran alien traders uncomfortable. The creature had been brought from the outer rim world of Zirion 7, where it had been bred by the HFY as a war mount. The HFY were known throughout the galaxy for their military prowess and their ability to enhance creatures through biomanipulation. But this particular specimen had been deemed a failure. Its reflexes were too slow for combat, its aggression levels too low for war. When the HFY military rejected it, the breeders had sent it to the auction blocks to recoup whatever credits they could. "Pathetic specimen," growled a Vrex merchant as he approached the pen. His translator device rendered his chittering into standard galactic. "Look at how docile it is. What use is a war beast that won't fight?" The creature, designated as a Zirion Mammoth in the auction catalog, simply watched the merchant with those unnerving eyes. It made no threatening moves, showed no signs of the berserker rage that made its species valuable. When the Vrex rattled the containment field to provoke a response, the mammoth merely stepped back almost politely and resumed its quiet pacing. "Reserve price keeps dropping," noted a Nathi dealer, consulting a holographic display that flickered above her wrist device. "Started at 50,000 credits yesterday. Now they're asking 15,000. By tomorrow they'll probably take whatever they can get." Other potential buyers had come and gone throughout the day. A Zephyrian circus owner had considered it briefly before deciding the creature lacked the spark needed for entertainment. A mining consortium representative had measured its bulk and deemed it insufficient for the heavy labor they required. Even the budget-conscious colony ships looking for pack animals had passed it by, claiming it ate too much for its apparent utility. As the afternoon wore on and the auction hall began to empty, the mammoth's fate seemed sealed. The HFY handler assigned to its care had long since given up trying to showcase its positive qualities. Instead, he sat in a nearby chair, occasionally glancing at the creature with something approaching pity. In a few hours, if no buyer emerged, the mammoth would likely be processed for its bio-enhanced hide and the metallic elements in its blood. It wouldn't be the first failed experiment to meet such an end. The creature seemed to sense its predicament. Throughout the day, as potential buyers had examined and rejected it, something had flickered in those amber eyes. Not despair exactly, but a kind of resigned understanding. It had been bred for war but lacked the killer instinct. It had been designed for glory but possessed only gentleness. In a galaxy that valued strength above all else, it had committed the cardinal sin of being different. Near closing time, as the auction hall's lights began to dim and the last of the serious buyers headed for the exits, a new figure appeared in the doorway. Unlike the imposing aliens who had dominated the day's proceedings, this newcomer was small, slight, and unmistakably human. She couldn't have been more than 16 standard years old, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and wearing the kind of practical clothing that marked her as someone from the agricultural sectors. Maya. Chen had spent the last 3 hours working her way through every pen in the facility, her trained eye evaluating each creature not for its obvious strengths but for something far more subtle. As the daughter of terraforming specialists, she had grown up around alien livestock, learning to see potential where others saw only problems. She had watched the Vrex merchants dismiss creatures for being too gentle, seen Nathi dealers reject animals for lacking aggression, and observed colony representatives pass by specimens that didn't fit their narrow criteria. But Maya wasn't looking for a war mount or a circus animal, or even a beast of burden. She was looking for something else entirely. something that the other buyers couldn't possibly understand because they had never lived on a frontier world where survival depended not on domination, but on partnership. As she approached Lot 847's pen, the Xerion Mammoth stopped its pacing and turned to face her. For a long moment, human and alien regarded each other across the containment field. Maya took in the creature's obvious physical power, noted the bio-enhanced elements that spoke of advanced breeding, and most importantly, recognized the intelligence in those amber eyes. "Hello there," she said softly, her voice carrying none of the commanding tones that other potential buyers had used. "You've had a rough day, haven't you?" The mammoth tilted its massive head slightly as if considering her words. Then, in a gesture that would have seemed impossible to the earlier visitors, it took a careful step closer to the containment field. Not aggressive, not demanding, but almost curious. Maya smiled, and for the first time all day, the Xerion Mammoth's eyes seemed to brighten with something that looked remarkably like hope. Maya reached into her jacket and pulled out a small scanner, running it along the containment field to read the Mammoth's biosignature. The device chirped softly as data flowed across its screen: muscle density, neural activity, metabolic rates, and a dozen other metrics that painted a picture far different from what the other buyers had seen. "Fascinating," she murmured, studying the readings. "Your reflexes aren't slow at all. They're just selective." The Kethai handler, who had been dozing in his chair, suddenly perked up at hearing someone actually talking to his charge. He approached Maya with the weary expression of someone who had explained the same disappointing facts too many times already. "Young human," he said, his translator rendering his guttural language into polite but tired words. "I must warn you, this creature is defective. The bio-enhancement process was incomplete. It lacks the proper aggression conditioning that makes its species valuable." Maya glanced at him briefly, then turned back to the mammoth. "What's its name?" The handler blinked in confusion. In all the months he had cared for the creature, no one had ever asked that question. "Name? It is designated X7 Alpha 947. "That's not a name," Maya said firmly. "That's a catalog number." She studied the mammoth's face, noting the way it watched her with what could only be described as hope. "I think I'll call you Titan." As if responding to the name, the mammoth, now Titan, made a soft rumbling sound deep in its chest. Not a growl or a roar, but something almost like a purr amplified through several tons of bio-enhanced muscle and bone. The handler stared in amazement. It has never made that sound before." Maya wasn't surprised. She had grown up around creatures that other people couldn't understand. Animals that responded not to dominance or fear, but to respect and genuine connection. Her parents had taught her that intelligence took many forms, and that the most powerful bonds were built on trust rather than control. "How much?" she asked simply. "The current asking price is 15,000 credits, the handler replied automatically, then caught himself. "But perhaps we could negotiate. The auction closes in 2 hours, and if no sale is made." Maya nodded, understanding the unspoken threat. She pulled out a credit chip, checking her available funds. Her parents had given her 20,000 credits to purchase livestock for their new terraforming project on Kepler 438b, a frontier world that needed hardy, intelligent animals capable of adapting to challenging conditions. She had spent the day looking for creatures that could handle the work, but more importantly, ones that could become true partners in the effort to build a new world. "I'll give you 12,000, she said, not as an insult, but as a practical offer. "And I'll take full responsibility for transport and integration." The handler's eyes widened. After a day of rejections and dismissive comments, someone was actually willing to pay real credits for his charge. He began to nod eagerly, then paused. "Young human, I must ask, what do you intend to do with it?" This creature was bred for war but cannot fight. It was designed for intimidation but shows only gentleness. On most worlds it would be considered useless. Maya smiled, the kind of expression that had charmed difficult animals and skeptical adults throughout her young life. "That's exactly why I want him. See, where I'm from, we don't need warriors. We need partners." She began to walk around the pen, and Titan turned to follow her movement, his massive head tracking her with obvious interest. The bio-enhancements that make him defective as a war mount might make him perfect for terraforming work. Those metallic patches in his hide? They probably help him process environmental toxins. The intelligence that makes him too thoughtful for combat? That means he can learn complex tasks and adapt to new challenges. The handler listened with growing amazement as Maya continued her analysis. The docility that made the military reject him means he won't panic in dangerous situations. He'll think first, react second, and that rumbling sound he just made, that tells me he's capable of forming emotional bonds, which is essential for the kind of partnership we need. As Maya spoke, other potential buyers who had dismissed the Mammoth earlier began to drift closer, suddenly interested in what the young human had to say. A few of them started to reconsider their earlier assessments, but Maya was already sealing the deal. 12,000 credits, she repeated, holding out her credit chip. Final offer. The handler took the chip without hesitation, transferring the funds and officially completing the sale. As the transaction processed, Maya approached the containment field controls. "Wait," called one of the Vrex merchants who had earlier declared the creature pathetic. "Perhaps I was too hasty in my evaluation. I would be willing to offer 18,000 credits." Maya didn't even turn around. "Sorry, but Titan's already spoken for." She deactivated the containment field and stepped into the pen. Several aliens backed away nervously as the massive creature was freed from its constraints. Titan could easily have trampled Maya or crushed her with a casual movement. Instead, he approached her slowly, lowering his great head until it was nearly at her eye level. Maya reached out carefully, letting Titan sniff her hand before gently touching the side of his neck. His hide was warm and had an unusual texture, like leather infused with metal fibers. The bio-enhanced patches pulsed with a faint inner light at her touch. "Hello, Titan," she said softly. "Ready to go home?" The Mammoth's response was unmistakable. He knelt on his front legs, lowering himself until Maya could easily climb onto his back. No one had trained him to do this. It was pure instinct, a gesture of trust and partnership that left the watching aliens speechless. As Maya settled herself between Titan's shoulders, she felt the power contained in the creature beneath her, not the mindless strength of a beast of burden, but the controlled might of an intelligent being who had chosen to accept her as his partner. The metallic patches in his hide warmed slightly, and she realized they were responding to her body heat, automatically adjusting to ensure her comfort. "Magnificent," whispered a Nathi dealer, her earlier dismissal forgotten. "I've never seen a bond form so quickly." Maya guided Titan toward the exit, and the massive creature moved with surprising grace, his sound-dampening hooves making almost no noise despite his enormous weight. Other animals in nearby pens turned to watch as they passed, and Maya noticed that many of them seemed calmer in Titan's presence, as if his gentle nature was somehow contagious. At the auction hall's exit, the handler ran after them, carrying a datapad with Titan's medical records and care instructions. "Young human," he called, "I must ask, how did you know? How did you see what others could not?" Maya smiled down at him from her perch atop Titan's shoulders. "Simple. Everyone else was looking for what they expected to find. I was looking for what was actually there." As they stepped out into the spaceport's main thoroughfare, heading for the transport ships, Maya felt Titan's contentment through their newfound connection. For the first time in his life, the gentle giant had found someone who valued him, not for what he was supposed to be, but for what he truly was. The transport ship Frontier Hope was designed for one purpose: moving colonists and their equipment to the galaxy's edge worlds where humans carved out new homes from hostile environments. Its cargo bays were vast and utilitarian, filled with everything from atmospheric processors to prefabricated housing units. But it was in Bay 7 where Maya made her temporary home alongside Titan and the other livestock she had purchased. Captain Elena Vasquez, a weathered woman who had spent 20 years running supplies to frontier worlds, had initially been skeptical about transporting the massive alien creature. She had seen plenty of exotic animals in her career, and most of them caused nothing but trouble during the long journey through hyperspace. "That thing better not try to break out of its restraints," she had warned Maya during boarding. "I've got 300 colonists on this ship, and I won't risk their safety for some overgrown alien pet." But Titan had surprised everyone by being the most well-behaved passenger on the entire ship. While other animals paced nervously in their enclosures or made noise that echoed through the hull, Titan seemed content to simply observe his surroundings with those intelligent amber eyes. He ate his rations without fuss, responded immediately to Maya's commands, and actually appeared to have a calming effect on the other creatures around him. Maya had set up a small living space next to Titan's enlarged stall, partly to monitor his adjustment to ship life, but mostly because she was fascinated by the creature's rapid learning ability. Within hours of boarding, Titan had figured out the ship's artificial gravity systems and adjusted his movements accordingly. He had learned to recognize the various crew members who passed through the cargo bay, and would acknowledge each with a subtle nod of his massive head. Most remarkably, he had begun to understand the ship's routine when the hyperspace engines engaged, creating the characteristic harmonic vibration that unnerved most passengers. Titan would position himself in a specific way that dampened the noise for the smaller animals nearby. When feeding time approached, he would alert Maya by making that soft rumbling sound that had become their private communication signal. Dr. James Park, the expedition's xenobiologist, had become a frequent visitor to Bay 7. Initially drawn by scientific curiosity about Titan's bioenhancements, he stayed because he was witnessing something unprecedented in his 20-year career studying alien life forms. The neuroplasticity is extraordinary, he explained to Maya as they watched Titan carefully manipulate a simple puzzle box she had created from spare parts. Most creatures bred for specific purposes show rigid behavioral patterns. But your Titan, he's adapting and learning at a rate I've never seen before. Maya nodded, not surprised but pleased to have her instincts confirmed by an expert. I think the HFY didn't create a failed war mount. They accidentally created something much more valuable, a truly adaptable intelligence. The puzzle box clicked open under Titan's careful manipulation, revealing the fruit treat Maya had hidden inside. Instead of immediately eating it, Titan examined the mechanism again as if memorizing how it worked. Then he gently offered the fruit to one of the smaller animals in a nearby enclosure, a nervous Terran goat that had been refusing to eat since boarding. Dr. Park stared in amazement. Did he just solve a mechanical puzzle and then demonstrate empathy? That combination of technical intelligence and emotional awareness is supposed to be impossible in a creature his size. Nothing's impossible, Maya replied, scratching behind Titan's ear ridge. Just improbable until it happens. As the days passed during their journey through hyperspace, other passengers began to hear about the remarkable creature in Bay 7. Captain Vasquez, initially reluctant to allow civilian visitors to the cargo area, eventually gave in to the numerous requests. Soon Maya found herself giving impromptu presentations about Titan's abilities and the principles behind human-animal partnerships. The visitors included families with children who were amazed by Titan's gentle nature, elderly colonists who found his presence somehow comforting, and even skeptical engineers who came expecting to debunk the stories, but left impressed by his problem-solving abilities. Word spread through the ship that the failed alien Mammoth was actually something special. One visitor proved particularly significant. Commander Sarah Mitchell, the military liaison assigned to the Kepler 438b colony. She had served in several frontier conflicts and understood both the value and the danger of enhanced alien creatures. Her initial assessment had been cautious. She saw Titan as a potential security risk that would need to be monitored carefully. But after watching Maya work with Titan for several hours, demonstrating their communication system and the creature's remarkable ability to understand complex instructions, Commander Mitchell's opinion began to shift. I've seen war mounts in action, she told Maya privately. Creatures bred for violence and conditioned to follow orders without question. They're effective weapons, but they're also unstable. Your Titan is something different entirely. Maya looked up from where she was teaching Titan to sort different types of seeds, a skill that would be valuable for agricultural work on their destination world. How do you mean? A war mount follows orders because it's been conditioned to do so, but Titan chooses to cooperate because he wants to. That's not just intelligence, that's wisdom. And wisdom is far more valuable than raw aggression. Commander Mitchell paused, watching as Titan carefully separated a handful of mixed seeds into distinct piles, his massive claws moving with surprising delicacy. On a frontier world like Kepler 438b, the difference between wisdom and aggression might be the difference between building a successful colony and watching it fail. Maya felt a surge of vindication. She had known instinctively that Titan was special, but having that confirmed by someone with Commander Mitchell's experience meant something important. So you don't see him as a security risk anymore? Quite the opposite, the commander replied. I'm starting to think he might be one of our most valuable assets. The question is whether the other colonists will be able to see past their preconceptions. That question would be answered soon enough. According to the ship's navigation system, they were less than 48 hours away from their destination, a world where Titan's true potential would finally be put to the test. As if sensing the importance of the moment, Titan completed his seed-sorting task and turned to look at Maya with those intelligent amber eyes. In them, she saw not just trust and affection, but something that looked remarkably like determination. Whatever challenges awaited them on Kepler 438b, they would face them together. Kepler 438b hung in space like a jewel, its surface a swirling mixture of rust-red deserts, blue-green seas, and white cloud formations that spoke of active weather systems. But as the Frontier Hope descended through the planet's atmosphere, the harsh reality of their new home became apparent. Maya pressed her face to the viewport in Bay 7, watching the landscape scroll past below. The world was beautiful in its own stark way, but it was also unforgiving. Jagged mountain ranges cut across vast plateaus where nothing seemed to grow. Dust storms the size of continents churned across the equatorial regions. Even the areas designated for human settlement looked challenging, rocky, terrain broken by deep canyons and scattered with the kind of obstacles that would make traditional colonization equipment struggle. Not exactly a garden world, observed Dr. Park, who had joined Maya and several other passengers at the viewing station. No, Maya agreed. But that's exactly why we're here. Anyone can colonize a paradise. It takes something special to make a home out of a place like this. Titan stood beside her, his massive frame easily accommodating the ship's movements as they entered the more turbulent layers of atmosphere. His amber eyes were fixed on the approaching surface, and Maya could sense his alertness through their growing bond. He was studying their new world with the same focused attention he had given to every puzzle and challenge during their journey. The landing process took nearly 3 hours as Captain Vasquez carefully navigated the ship to the designated colony site. The chosen location sat on a high plateau overlooking a vast valley, a strategic position that would allow the colonists to expand downward as their settlement grew, but one that presented immediate challenges for construction and agriculture. When the cargo bay doors finally opened, Maya felt the first blast of Kepler 438b's atmosphere on her face. The air was thinner than Earth normal, with a metallic taste that spoke of high mineral content. The gravity was lighter too, about 80% of standard, which explained why Titan seemed to move with even greater grace as he stepped down the exit ramp. Colony Director Harrison Webb, a man in his 50s who had overseen the establishment of 6 previous frontier settlements, was waiting to greet the new arrivals. His expression was polite but skeptical as he watched Maya lead Titan off the ship. "Miss Chen," he said, consulting his tablet, "I see you've brought quite an unusual addition to our livestock roster." "Titan," Maya replied simply. "He's going to be essential for our success here." Director Webb's eyebrows rose slightly. "Essential?" "According to the manifesto, he's listed as a failed Keth-High war mount purchased at discount. I'm not sure what essential function a damaged alien creature could serve in establishing our colony." Before Maya could respond, a commotion arose from the equipment staging area. One of the heavy cargo haulers, a massive machine designed to move construction supplies across rough terrain, had gotten stuck in a depression near the landing site. Several technicians were working frantically to free it, but the hauler's treads only spun uselessly in the loose soil, digging itself deeper with each attempt. "That's the third hauler that's gotten bogged down today," muttered Director Webb. "The terrain surveys didn't adequately prepare us for how unstable the soil is here. If we can't move our heavy equipment, the construction schedule will be set back by months." Maya glanced at Titan, who was already studying the stuck machine with obvious interest. "Maybe we can help with that." Director Webb looked at her skeptically. "Miss Chen, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but that hauler weighs 40 tons. Even your impressive creature couldn't possibly." He trailed off as Titan began to move toward the stuck machine. The massive alien approached the hauler carefully, examining it from multiple angles while the technician stepped back nervously. Then, with movements that were surprisingly gentle given his size, Titan positioned himself behind the vehicle and lowered his head. "What's he doing?" asked one of the technicians. Maya smiled. "Problem solving." Titan's bio-enhanced hide began to glow more brightly, particularly around the metallic patches. Maya had noticed this phenomenon before. It seemed to happen when he was concentrating or exerting himself. Now as he carefully placed his massive forehead against the rear of the hauler, the glow intensified. "Everyone stand clear," Maya called, though she kept her own position where she could guide Titan if necessary. With a sound like distant thunder, Titan began to push. But this wasn't the brute force approach that might be expected from such a massive creature. Instead, he applied pressure in carefully calculated increments, adjusting his angle and force based on how the hauler responded. When the machine's treads began to find purchase in the soil, Titan subtly shifted his position to maintain the optimal angle of push. Within minutes, the hauler rolled free of its trap, its treads finally gripping solid ground. The technicians cheered, and even Director Webb looked impressed despite his earlier skepticism. But Titan wasn't finished. As the hauler moved to safer ground, the alien mammoth began examining the depression that had trapped it. Using his hooves, he carefully tested the soil composition at different points, his enhanced senses apparently detecting variations that human instruments had missed. "Dr. Park," Maya called, "you might want to see this." The xenobiologist hurried over with his scanner, running readings on the areas that Titan was investigating. His eyes widened as the data flowed across his display. Fascinating. The soil composition varies dramatically within just a few meters. Some areas have clay content that makes them unstable when wet, while others have natural drainage properties that would make them ideal for construction foundations. He looked up at Titan with new respect. He's conducting a geological survey using enhanced senses we don't even fully understand. Director Webb approached more cautiously, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by professional interest. "Are you saying this creature can identify suitable construction sites?" "More than that," Maya replied, watching as Titan moved to another area and began the same careful testing process. "I think he can help us map the entire colony site, identifying the safest areas for building and the most suitable locations for agriculture." As if to demonstrate her point, Titan moved to a seemingly identical patch of ground about 50 meters away and made his soft rumbling sound, the signal he and Maya had developed to indicate discovery of something important. When Dr. Park scanned the area, his instruments detected an underground water source less than 3 meters below the surface. "A natural well," Dr. Park breathed. The preliminary surveys missed it completely. Director Webb stared at the readings, then at Titan, then at Maya. "Miss Chen, I believe I owe you an apology. And perhaps we need to completely revise our settlement planning process." As word spread among the colonists about Titan's abilities, small groups began gathering to watch the alien mammoth work. Children who had been nervous about the massive creature now followed at a safe distance, fascinated by his methodical exploration of their new world. Adults who had initially seen him as just another piece of livestock began to understand that they were witnessing something remarkable. Maya felt a surge of pride as she watched Titan carefully investigate each new area of the colony site. The Kethai had bred him to be a weapon, but he had become something far more valuable. A bridge between human ambition and alien wisdom, a partner who could help them not just survive on this challenging world, but truly make it their home. As Kepler 438b's red sun began to set on their first day, casting long shadows across the plateau, Maya realized that their real journey was just beginning. 3 weeks into the colony's establishment, a crisis emerged that threatened to derail the entire settlement project. The geological surveys, even enhanced by Titan's remarkable sensory abilities, had missed a critical detail about Kepler 438b's geography. A massive chasm, nearly 2 kilometers wide and apparently bottomless, cut directly across the path between the colony site and the primary water source they desperately needed. Maya stood at the edge of the chasm with Director Webb, Commander Mitchell, and the colony's chief engineer, Thomas Hartwell. The gap yawned before them like a wound in the planet's surface, its walls disappearing into shadows that their lights couldn't penetrate. On the far side, clearly visible through the thin atmosphere, lay the aquifer complex that their advanced sensors had identified as the most reliable water source within 100 kilometers. The preliminary orbital scans showed a small ravine, Engineer Hartwell said, his voice tight with frustration. "Not this canyon. Our bridge-building equipment isn't designed for spans this wide. The materials we brought could maybe handle 500 meters. This is 4 times that distance." Director Webb rubbed his temples, clearly calculating the implications. How long to get replacement equipment from Earth? 18 months minimum, Commander Mitchell replied grimly. And that's assuming the Colonial Authority approves emergency funding. Without reliable water access, we'll have to evacuate the colony within 6 months. Maya knelt beside Titan, who had been studying the chasm with his usual methodical attention. Over the past weeks, she had learned to read his body language and understand the subtle changes in his bioluminescent patches. Right now, those patches were pulsing in a pattern she had never seen before. Not the steady glow of concentration or the bright flare of physical exertion, but something rhythmic and complex. "What is it, big guy?" she asked softly, placing her hand on his neck. Titan made his rumbling communication sound, then did something unexpected. He moved to the very edge of the chasm and lowered his massive head toward the depths. The bio-enhanced patches on his hide began to pulse more rapidly, and Maya realized he was using some kind of enhanced echolocation. Dr. Park, who had become a constant observer of Titan's behavior, pulled out his scanner and began taking readings. Incredible. He's mapping the chasm using sound frequencies well beyond human hearing range. The bio-enhancements include some kind of advanced sonar system. Can he tell how deep it is? Director Webb asked. Better than that, Dr. Park replied, studying his data. He's identifying structural details in the rock walls, mineral compositions, even stress fractures in the stone. He paused, looking confused. But there's something else. The echoes he's generating, they're not just bouncing off the bottom. There's something down there. Titan suddenly stepped back from the edge and began moving along the chasm's rim. His pace was purposeful, as if he were looking for something specific. Maya followed, trusting in the bond they had developed. The others trailed behind, uncertain but curious about what the alien Mammoth had discovered. After nearly an hour of walking along the chasm's edge, Titan stopped at a point where the gap narrowed slightly, though it was still far too wide for any conventional bridge. He made his rumbling sound again, then did something that made everyone freeze. He began to descend into the chasm. "Maya, stop him," Director Webb called out in alarm. "If he falls." But Maya could see that Titan wasn't falling. The rocky walls of the chasm weren't vertical as they had appeared from above. Instead, they formed a series of natural ledges and outcroppings that someone with enhanced senses and perfect balance could potentially navigate. Titan's hooves, designed to absorb sound and vibration, found purchase on surfaces that looked impossibly precarious. "He's found a path," Maya breathed, peering over the edge to watch Titan's careful descent. "There's a way down." Dr. Park was frantically taking readings. His bio-enhancements are incredible. The metallic patches in his hide are actually sensing stress points in the rock, helping him identify stable footing. And those sound-dampening hooves are giving him grip on surfaces that would crumble under normal pressure. Titan descended for nearly 30 minutes before he reached what appeared to be a ledge system about halfway down the chasm wall. From there, his rumbling call echoed up to them with a different quality, not just communication, but excitement. Maya had been learning to rappel during the colony's outdoor training sessions. Without hesitation, she began preparing her equipment. "I'm going down." "Absolutely not," Commander Mitchell said firmly. "It's too dangerous. We can't risk losing you too." "Titan's not lost," Maya replied, checking her ropes and anchors. "He's found something, and if there's any chance it could solve our water problem, we have to investigate." The descent took Maya nearly an hour, even with proper climbing gear. But when she finally reached the ledge where Titan waited, she understood why he had been so excited to explore. The ledge wasn't just a natural rock formation. It was the entrance to a vast cave system that extended deep into the planet's crust. More importantly, the sound of running water echoed from within the caves. "There's a whole underground river system down here," Maya called up to the others, her voice carrying clearly in the thin atmosphere. "Titan didn't just find us a way to cross the chasm. He found us a direct route to more water than we could use in a century." Over the following days, a full exploration team descended into the cave system that Titan had discovered. The underground waterway was even more extensive than Maya's initial assessment had suggested. It connected to multiple aquifers and included natural reservoirs that could support not just their current colony, but expansion efforts for decades to come. More remarkably, the cave system provided a sheltered route across the chasm. While it would require some construction work to make it fully accessible, It was infinitely more feasible than building a bridge across the surface gap. Engineer Hartwell, who had initially been skeptical of relying on an alien creature for geological assessment, now found himself redesigning the entire colony infrastructure around Titan's discoveries. "I've worked on a dozen frontier worlds," he told Maya, as they surveyed the cave entrance that would become the colony's main water access point. "I've never seen anything like this. Your Titan isn't just intelligent, he's revolutionizing how we approach planetary colonization." Director Webb, reviewing the revised colony plans that took advantage of Titan's findings, shook his head in amazement. "We would have spent months trying to solve the water problem with conventional engineering. Instead, your creature solved it in a few hours by thinking in ways we never could." Maya scratched behind Titan's ear ridge as the massive alien stood contentedly beside the cave entrance, his bio-enhanced patches glowing with satisfaction. "That's what happens when you stop trying to force solutions and start working with the world you're given." As Kepler 438b's 2 small moons rose over their new home, Maya realized that Titan had proven something profound. The HFY had tried to create a perfect weapon and failed. But in their failure, they had accidentally created something far more valuable. A perfect partner for humanity's greatest challenge, learning to thrive among the stars. The crisis came without warning on a day when Kepler 438b's weather system seemed perfectly calm. Maya was working with Titan in the agricultural sectors, testing soil compositions for the colony's first major crop planting, when the seismic sensors throughout the settlement began screaming alerts. "All colonists to emergency stations." Director Webb's voice crackled over the communication system. "Volcanic activity detected in Grid 7. This is not a drill." Maya looked up from the soil samples she had been examining, her heart racing. Grid 7 was the location of the colony's primary geothermal power plant, the facility that provided electricity and heating for the entire settlement. More critically, it was also where 37 maintenance workers were currently conducting routine system upgrades. Titan's bio-enhanced patches began pulsing rapidly, and Maya could feel his tension through their bond. His enhanced senses had detected something that the human instruments were only beginning to register: seismic activity that suggested an imminent volcanic eruption. "Commander," Mitchell's voice joined the emergency broadcast. "Emergency evacuation protocols in effect for Grid 7. All personnel in the geothermal facility have been ordered to evacuate immediately." But when Maya reached the emergency command center that had been hastily established in the colony's main hall, the situation was worse than anyone had initially realized. The seismic activity had triggered a rock slide that blocked the primary access road to Grid 7. The emergency evacuation vehicles couldn't reach the facility, and the workers inside were trapped. "Backup routes?" Director Webb asked urgently, studying the holographic terrain display. "Blocked by the same slide," reported Engineer Hartwell. "The geological instability has affected a 5-kilometer area. It would take days to clear a path with conventional equipment, and we don't have days. If the volcanic activity increases, the entire facility could be destroyed." Dr. Park, who had been monitoring the situation from his mobile laboratory, approached with his scanner displaying alarming data. "The trapped workers have maybe 8 hours before the volcanic gases make the facility uninhabitable. And that's assuming the structure itself survives the increasing seismic activity." Maya felt Titan's massive presence beside her as the alien Mammoth had followed her to the command center. His amber eyes were fixed on the terrain display, and she could see him processing the same information that was causing panic among the human colonists. "What about aircraft?" Commander Mitchell asked. "Could we evacuate by air?" "The volcanic ash is already affecting atmospheric conditions," replied the settlement's pilot. "Flying in this area would be suicide until the activity subsides." Maya watched the display showing the location of the trapped workers and the various blocked routes. Then she noticed something that the others had missed. "What about the cave system?" Engineer Hartwell looked confused. "The caves that Titan discovered are on the opposite side of the colony from Grid 7. "No," Maya said, studying the geological data more carefully. "Look at the mineral composition readings that Titan mapped during his exploration. The cave system is part of a much larger underground network. It extends in multiple directions, including toward the geothermal area." Dr. Park began running calculations on his scanner. Cross-referencing Titan's geological surveys with the current seismic data, his eyes widened as the results appeared. She's right. The underground river system connects to thermal vents throughout this entire region. There could be a cave passage that leads directly to the Grid 7 area. Director Webb looked skeptical. Could be isn't good enough. We can't risk an underground expedition based on speculation. Maya looked at Titan, who was still studying the displays with obvious concentration. Slowly, the massive alien turned to face her and made his soft, rumbling communication sound. But this time the sound carried a note of confidence that she had learned to recognize. Titan knows, she said simply. He can sense the underground network. He can guide us to the trapped workers. Maya, Commander Mitchell said carefully, I understand your faith in your creature, but we're talking about human lives. We can't base a rescue operation on animal instinct. It's not instinct, Maya replied firmly. It's enhanced sensory capability that's far superior to our instruments. Titan has been mapping underground structures since we arrived. He knows this planet's geology better than any of our surveys. To prove her point, Maya placed her hand on Titan's neck and spoke directly to him. Can you find a path to the geothermal facility through the caves? Titan's response was immediate and unmistakable. He moved to the terrain display and used his massive head to point at a specific location on the map, a spot where his earlier explorations had identified a cave entrance that led deeper into the mountain. Dr. Park scanned the indicated location and nodded slowly. There is a thermal signature consistent with cave systems in that area, and the mineral readings suggest it connects to the same network Titan discovered earlier. Even if there is a connection, Engineer Hartwell protested, navigating unknown cave systems during a volcanic emergency would be extremely dangerous. We could lose the rescue team as well as the trapped workers. Maya was already moving toward her equipment locker, pulling out climbing gear and emergency supplies. Then we make it a small team. Titan and me with maybe 2 volunteers who are experienced with underground work. Absolutely not, Director Webb said firmly. I won't authorize a mission with such a high probability of failure. Commander Mitchell studied the seismic readings, which were growing worse by the minute. What's the probability of failure if we do nothing? The question hung in the air as everyone processed the implications. The trapped workers would almost certainly die if they weren't evacuated soon. The conventional rescue attempts had already failed. Titan's underground route might be dangerous, but it was the only option they had left. I'll go with her, volunteered Marcus Chen, one of the colony's mining specialists and Maya's distant cousin. I've got cave exploration experience and I know underground safety protocols. So do I, added Dr. Sarah Kim, the colony's chief medical officer. If we're going to attempt a rescue, we'll need someone who can handle medical emergencies. Director Webb looked at the volunteers, then at the increasingly urgent seismic readings, then at Titan, who stood waiting with the patient confidence of someone who knew exactly what needed to be done. God help us all, he said finally. Authorization granted for emergency rescue mission. But I want constant communication and immediate abort if conditions become impossible. As Maya finished checking her equipment, she felt Titan's gentle nudge against her shoulder. Looking up into those intelligent amber eyes, she saw not just determination, but something that looked remarkably like reassurance. Ready to be heroes? She asked softly. Titan's bio-enhanced patches flared bright with what Maya had learned to recognize as his expression of absolute certainty. Whatever dangers waited in the caves beneath Kepler 438b, they would face them together. The rescue mission began in the depths of the cave system that Titan had discovered weeks earlier. As Maya, Marcus, and Dr. Kim descended into the underground network, their headlamps cutting through darkness that seemed to swallow light itself, the seismic activity above grew more intense. Each tremor sent small rocks cascading from the cave ceiling, a constant reminder of the volcanic forces building toward eruption. But Titan moved through the caves with absolute confidence, his enhanced senses guiding the rescue team along passages that human instruments could never have detected. His bioluminescent patches provided additional light, pulsing in patterns that Maya had learned to read as navigation signals. When he paused at intersections, briefly testing the air with senses beyond human understanding, Maya knew to wait for his guidance rather than rushing ahead. The thermal readings are incredible, Dr. Kim whispered as they followed a passage that led steadily upward through the mountain. The cave walls are actually warming as we get closer to the geothermal facility. Titan is navigating by heat signatures that our equipment can barely detect. Marcus, who had spent years exploring caves on multiple worlds, shook his head in amazement. I've never seen anything like this. He's not just finding a path, he's choosing the safest route through an active geological event. It's like he can sense which passages will remain stable, even if the volcano erupts. The journey through the cave system took nearly 4 hours, but when they finally emerged, they found themselves exactly where Titan had promised, inside the service tunnels beneath the Grid 7 geothermal facility. The trapped workers, who had been growing desperate as volcanic gases began seeping into their shelter areas, greeted the rescue team with a mixture of relief and amazement. "How did you find us?" asked Janet Torres, the facility supervisor. "The surface routes are completely blocked. We had the best guide in the galaxy," Maya replied, gesturing to Titan, who was already examining the facility's structural damage with his systematic thoroughness. But the rescue was far from over. The 37 trapped workers needed to be evacuated through the same treacherous cave system, and the volcanic activity was intensifying. Worse, Titan's examination of the facility revealed critical damage to the geothermal containment systems, damage that could trigger a catastrophic explosion if not addressed. "The primary containment vessel is cracked," Dr. Kim reported after examining Titan's findings with her medical scanner adapted for structural analysis. "If the pressure builds much more, the entire facility will explode. The blast would destroy half the colony." Marcus studied the damaged equipment with growing concern. "It would take a team of specialists weeks to repair this properly." "We don't have weeks, we probably don't have hours." Maya watched as Titan approached the massive containment vessel, his bio-enhanced patches pulsing as he analyzed the damage. The crack in the metal surface was clearly visible, a jagged line nearly 3 meters long that was slowly spreading under the increasing pressure. Then Titan did something that no one expected. He positioned himself directly against the damaged vessel and began to glow more brightly than Maya had ever seen. The metallic patches in his hide seemed to liquefy, flowing like mercury toward the points where his body contacted the containment system. "What's he doing?" Janet Torres asked in amazement. Dr. Kim was frantically taking readings with her scanner. The biometallic elements in his hide are interfacing directly with the facility's systems. He's not just touching the containment vessel, he's actually bonding with it on a molecular level. The crack in the vessel began to seal itself as Titan's bio-enhanced elements flowed into the damaged areas. But Maya could sense through their bond that the process was taking an enormous toll on her partner. His breathing had become labored, and she could feel his pain as he literally gave parts of himself to save the facility. "Titan, stop," she said urgently. "You're hurting yourself." But the gentle giant continued his work, sealing the critical damage point by point. As the containment vessel stabilized, the dangerous pressure readings began to drop to safe levels. The immediate threat of explosion was over, but Titan's bioluminescent patches had dimmed significantly, and Maya could see that some of the metallic elements in his hide had been permanently depleted. "We need to evacuate everyone now," Marcus said urgently. "The repairs will hold, but this whole area is still unstable." The evacuation of 37 workers through the cave system should have been impossible. The passages that had accommodated a rescue team of 4 were narrow and treacherous. But Titan, despite his obvious exhaustion from the repair effort, found ways to widen critical bottlenecks using his massive strength. At dangerous crossing points, he positioned his body as a living bridge, allowing the evacuees to climb safely across gaps that would otherwise have been impassable. The journey back through the caves took 8 hours, with Titan leading the way despite his depleted condition. When the group finally emerged at the original cave entrance, they found the entire colony waiting. Word of the rescue mission had spread and colonists had gathered to help with the evacuation. But the most significant welcome came from an unexpected source. A HFY military transport had arrived at the colony, while the rescue was in progress. The ship's commander, General HFY, had come to reclaim what he described as stolen military property, the failed war, mount that had somehow ended up in human hands. Director Webb had managed to delay the HFY commander's demands by explaining that the property in question was currently engaged in a critical rescue operation. But when Titan emerged from the caves, leading 37 exhausted but alive colonists to safety, General HFY's attitude shifted dramatically. "Impossible," the Kethai general muttered, his translator rendering his amazement into standard galactic. This creature was rejected for combat ineffectiveness. It lacked proper aggression protocols. Maya, still supporting Titan as he recovered from his ordeal, looked up at the alien commander. You're right. He lacked aggression. Instead, he had something better: wisdom, courage, and the ability to form genuine partnerships. Dr. Park approached with a comprehensive report of Titan's actions during the rescue mission. General, this creature just saved 40 lives, including the rescue team. He navigated a complex cave system during a volcanic emergency, performed structural repairs that prevented a catastrophic explosion, and led an evacuation that would have been impossible without his assistance. General Vexhai studied the data, his crystalline features reflecting his growing amazement. These capabilities, they exceed the original design parameters by orders of magnitude. The creature has evolved beyond its initial conditioning. He didn't evolve, Maya said firmly, her hand resting on Titan's neck where she could feel his steady heartbeat. He just found the right partner. The Kethai tried to create a weapon, but they accidentally created something much more valuable: a being capable of true cooperation. The Kethai commander considered this for a long moment, then made a gesture that his translator rendered as formal acknowledgement. In recognition of exceptional performance exceeding original specifications, the Kethai military authority hereby transfers full ownership of this unit to its current human partner. No compensation required. As General Vexhai's transport departed, taking with it any remaining legal questions about Titan's status, Maya realized that something profound had happened. The failed war mount that had been dismissed as worthless at an alien auction had become the savior of human colony. More than that, he had proven that the greatest strength wasn't found in aggression or domination, but in the bonds forged between different species working toward common goals. Titan, his bioluminescent patches beginning to brighten again as he recovered from his ordeal, made his soft rumbling sound of contentment. Around them, the colonists of Kepler 438b continued the work of building their new home, but now they did so with the knowledge that they had gained more than just another world. They had gained a champion who proved that even in the vast darkness of space, the light of partnership could illuminate the path to any future they dared to dream. As Kepler 438b's red sun set behind the mountains where Titan had led them to safety, Maya smiled and whispered, "Who's a good mammoth?" Titan's rumbling response seemed to echo across their new world, carrying with it the promise of all the adventures yet to come.